Right, so we are going to talk about graph number 2, which is supply and demand. I imagine most of you don't need a hand with this one, but I'm going to go over it anyways. I'm going to emphasize the things that maybe you don't know so well. So first, supply and demand is just price and quantity. So we put our P and our Q. We have our downward sloping demand curve because of the law of demand. We have our upward sloping supply curve because of the law of supply. And then we get an equilibrium where demand equals supply. That gives us our price. And we dash down, that gives us our quantity. Now, what they might ask is about a disequilibrium, right? They'll say, what if the price isn't at P, but at P1 up here? What's going to happen if this is our price? The answer is we're going to have a disequilibrium. We're going to intersect twice. Our first is going to be quantity demanded at the intersection of the demand curve here. And our second is going to be quantity supplied at the intersection of the supply curve here. So between these two, demand and supply, we have a high supply because the price is high, businesses want to make profit. Low demand, so we have a surplus on our hands. I'm going to abbreviate as SURP. Surplus. When we have a surplus, it means that there's a flooding of the market and it's going to bid the price down. So price is actually going to fall until we get back to equilibrium. And the opposite is true. Down here with this equilibrium, if we have a P3 down here, then we're going to intersect the supply curve here. Quantity supply is going to be low. Quantity demand is going to be high. We'll have a shortage on our hands, and that will bid the price up because there's not enough to go around, but everybody wants them. The prices will rise again until we get back to equilibrium. Okay. Second thing you need to know about these is shifting curves. So we have our demand, we have our supply. Ooh, that's a bad supply curve. We have price, we have quantity. We have our initial equilibrium here, P1, initial quantity here, Q1. And then they'll say, hey, this happens, how does it affect the market? You need to know your determinants of demand and supply. So that's in your notes, go over them. But let's say they say there's a change in taste. People want more of this. What's going to happen? You show the shift. You can show the shift either with the arrows or using sequential numbers. So from D1 to D2. We get a new equilibrium point right here. We call this P2, P2. We call this Q2, Q2. And as a result, price went up and quantity, that's an up arrow, quantity went up, right? So be able to show a shift with either demand or supply or a double shift. So if demand and supply shift at the same time, be able to show what's indeterminate and what actually changes. Okay, the final thing you might have to be able to draw is a price, a price floor or a price ceiling. Sorry about that. It's price quantity. So we have our demand curve, downward sloping here. Got our supply curve, upward sloping here. We have our equilibrium points. Dash over, get P1. And we dash down and we get Q1. Now let's say they want a price ceiling. If I want a price ceiling to be effective, it means that I believe that the current price at P1 is too high. I need to intervene, right? So I'm going to set a price ceiling of like P2. My goal is to help the consumers. And so I'm going to set a price ceiling here because I believe the price is too high, and I'm creating a ceiling so price can't go any higher than this ceiling, right? So it has to be below our equilibrium price to have an effect. So I take this across, I call it PC, or you can spell that out, price ceiling, and then I get my two equilibriums. I'm at disequilibrium now. The difference is I'm not going to move to P1 because this is a federal law. Price ceiling is a law. So I dash down, and this gives me my quantity supply because it's intersecting my supply curve. So supply is going to fall because businesses aren't going to make as much profit when the price is lower. And I dash down here, demand is going to rise because individuals are going to flood the market. They're going to be excited about this because the price is so low. So as a result, with high demand and low supply, I have a shortage on my hands. Short. And a shortage in the worst case scenario can result in a first come first serve situation where whoever gets there first gets it. And then that can result in a black market because a person that gets there first buys all of them and then resells them for a much higher price. Price floor is the opposite, right? I create a floor that where prices can't fall below it. My goal is to help the producers, and as a result, I create a surplus, and that surplus results in too much of the product being on the market and businesses not being able to sell. All right, that's the basic gist of supply and demand. There are a few more details there, but generally, you might be asked like a couple of questions about the laws of demand and supply. So make sure you know those. And then maybe a question or two about a shifting curve or a price ceiling or price floor.